guys, welcome back. I'm out here in the edge of the field. It's about 5:45 in the morning, getting ready to do some spraying. When we left you last, I was kind of in the middle of getting all my late sweet potato and watermelon ground ready. We're going to finish working on that today after I get through with this. I'm going to do this first thing this morning. We did get a little bit of rain on Sunday. It wasn't much, but today is Tuesday, so it was just enough to kind of delay me one day. So let's hop in the tractor. I'll tell you what I'm doing and we'll go from there. What I'm doing here is putting out my regular scheduled insecticide and fungicide on all the melons on the plastic mulch. You know, most people can relate to what an insecticide does. You know, it kills or prevents insect damage. A lot of people may not be familiar with what a fungicide does. So in my opinion, the best way to fight disease in your crops is constantly stay ahead of them. You know, if you wait till you get a bunch of symptoms and signs of disease, a lot of times it's too late. If you followed me very closely or paid any attention to the details, you might say, well, I thought you fumigated these beds to get rid of a lot of disease. Well, we did, but those are soil-borne diseases. What we spray for pretty much throughout the season is going to be foliage, airborne, wind-blown diseases. Mostly. You know, and the insects also can spread disease. Not only can they, you know, chew on your foliage or your fruit, but they carry diseases like, for example, in cantaloupes, cucumber beetles will spread bacterial wilt. If I did not spray insecticide on my cantaloupes to control the cucumber beetles, I would pretty much 100% have bacterial wilt. If you look up bacterial wilt in cantaloupes, there is no cure, there's no control. Once you get it, the vines die and it's over. I learned that the hard way, way back at the beginning. Alright, when we get to the end, I'm going to get out and show you the boom width, and you can see why I need the extensions. Okay, I'm spraying 2 rows on both sides. Okay, my boom goes to the middle of these 2 rows. Same on the other side. This is where my extension starts. So if I didn't use it, you know, I wouldn't be able to get to the middle of this out here where the vines will be eventually. Watermelons are looking good. I'm not here to persuade anybody to use insecticides or fungicides. I'm just telling you, we have to have them here. And most places do. Spraying these fungicides, most of the time we're trying to do it on a preventative measure. That's why you have to stay on a schedule. If you wait until you start seeing symptoms, a lot of times it may be too late. It's a bad feeling when you walk out one morning and you start seeing disease symptoms showing up, because that stuff spreads so fast. And so that's why we try to stay ahead of it. You know, you want to keep your foliage as healthy as possible. You know, on your melon crops, if you don't have good foliage, your fruit's not going to size up. You're going to get sunburn. So it's a battle. It's a constant battle. All this is kind of like insurance. You know, you have to protect your crops, or something's going to get them. Something's going to eat them, or some disease is going to take them out. Different places in the country I know are different, but for me, right here, our temperature, our humidity, our rainfall that we get, throw all those in together, and it's the ideal situation for insects and disease. So until you've done it, you know, most people just don't have any idea, and it costs so much to do this, to spray regularly. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have to do it. If I thought I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't be doing it. Because when you look out there and see all that spray coming out of that boom, that's just dollars. And even by doing all this, we still have problems. So just think about what we would have if we did nothing. Kind of like going to the doctor. You know, you may go and get a shot to prevent something like chicken pox or measles or something, or when you're sick, you go and get a shot to help you feel better. This is the same deal. You know, we do preventative measures to keep from getting sick, and also to slow it down when our plants do get sick. Anything in the cucurbit family and tomatoes and peppers are the crops that have the most trouble with disease. Things like sweet potatoes and all our purple hull peas we plant, we don't have too much trouble with disease problems there. Peaches also. Peaches are bad about disease. You know, a lot of times people will relate to what I do compared to their garden. You know, well, I can do this in my garden and I don't have to do all that. And, you know, I don't have to spray for fungicides, or I can do organic. Well, that's fine. It's also on a very small scale, and your livelihood is also not dependent on it. You also haven't spent thousands and thousands of dollars out here trying to grow a crop before you ever get to the point of even having to spray it. So there's a lot of risk in all this. A lot of risk. On the fungicides, I do rotate constantly all throughout the season, because your plants can build up resistance just like to anything. But all your fungicides are categorized by mode of action. Same with the herbicides. You want to kind of switch that fungicide group around. You don't want to use 2 or 3 fungicides and rotate between them if they're all kind of in the same category. So we try to switch it around. You know, if you're going to spend that much money to do it, you might as well do it right. So we do try to have a rotation. All right, let's head back to the shop and regroup. And we're going to take both tractors down to the other farm and get started on finishing up everything down there. Okay, now I'm on the road headed to the other farm. We're in the big tractor now with the hipper. I've got a truck down there. The guys took me a truck down there to leave. I'm gonna leave this tractor there, bring the truck back, get the sprayer, mix up what we need, take it down there so I can have them both down there at one time. So when I get them both down there at one time, then we'll talk about what I'm doing. Okay, we've got the hipper behind me and I'm back in the spray tractor. See, I've got my wings folded back up now. All right, what we're doing here, and the reason I have both tractors here together, is I'm putting out a soil insecticide, and it needs to be hipped in and incorporated as fast as you can do it. And I'm gonna spray this whole field and then immediately come back and get on the hipper and incorporate it in. And so what we're gonna do is, you know, the spray will be broadcast all the way across. So you're gonna get some right here, and then you're gonna obviously have some out here. And when we come back with the hipper, we throw it all up. So this part will be down in the bed, and anything out here that we throw up will kind of get mixed in also. And then we'll come back and roll it and flatten it out. What that does is that gives your layer of protection down in the bed. And this is an absolute 100% must for sweet potatoes. If you did not do this, every sweet potato would have wormholes where they've been feeding on those potatoes. So what we're after is any type of grub, wireworm, cucumber beetle, larvae, any of that kind of stuff. They will be down in the ground feeding on those potato roots. Now what we have found also is, because we were doing a sweet potato watermelon rotation down here in my late melons, it used to be every other year, now it's every third year. We were having worm problems on those little transplants right after we planted them. And it wasn't like a bollworm or a corn earworm, it was those little wire worms. And what they would do would be get right up inside the stem of that little transplant and come up from the bottom to the top and eat it out, and it would kill it. And there was a year there where we had significant damage that we had to go back and replant. And I think the reason is these potatoes that overwinter and rot throughout the winter, I think you get some feeding going on there. That's just my theory. And you carry it over to the next year, and some of those grubs are already in the ground whenever we were transplanting the watermelon. So now we do all the sweet potato ground, all the late watermelon ground. We treat it with this soil insecticide, and it makes a big difference. What we're using here is belay and bifenthrin combination. All right, let's switch tractors. All right, we'll let it warm up a minute. You know, when I was talking about the rows are kind of flat and it kind of makes a flat surface with that chemical, and then we hip up on it. You know, if the rows were already hipped up and you sprayed it and you just kind of re-hipped them, then it would never really get down in the middle of that bed. So that's what we want. That's why I ran the do-all, or one of the reasons why, last week. This field here is a little less than 20 acres. We'll get it hipped up, and then I got about the same amount to do of my pea ground that's next door here. We'll go ahead and hip that up if it's dry enough. I'm not sure that it is. And we'll do all that before I go get the roller and bring it back. The reason you want to run the hipper as soon as you can after you put out that soil insecticide is the sun will break it down, so you don't want it sitting out there all day and start to lose some of its effectiveness or whatever from the sun. So you want to get it covered up as fast as you can. Ideally, I'd rather have somebody right behind me on the hipper, but since it's just me doing both of these, one reason why, or the main reason why, I have the tractor sitting right here ready, so I don't have to go back and get it and all that. That way I can hop out here as fast as I can. I didn't mention yesterday, I didn't do any filming yesterday, but the guys got the last cantaloupe on plastic planted, which is the third one. The fourth one will be here in this field. We got it planted in the greenhouse yesterday. So we also got our first squash planted yesterday in the field, first of two. And then we planted our second cucumber round in the greenhouse yesterday. So the only thing we have left to plant in the greenhouse is my second round of squash. And the only thing we have left to plant on plastic is my second round of cucumbers and the second round of squash. Okay, we moved over to the field here by the peach orchard, which will be my last two plantings of peas. Won't plant them until June, but it's starting to get a little weedy. There's little weeds coming up about that tall, so I'll go ahead and hip it, and that'll hold it for a little while. And then I'll probably come hip it again later, a couple weeks, or whatever is necessary if the weeds start coming back. And then if I have to, I'll spray it before we get ready to plant it, just to hold it back. It's hard to hold these fields clean when I plant my last plantings, which are so late, because it's so warm and moisture, and you know the weeds are going to come if you don't keep them at bay. So I don't ever want to let it get out of control. Okay, we got both tractors back to the shop. Now I've swapped over and put the roller on, big tractor, so we're gonna head back and do that. This is the roller, it's the same width as the hipper, 8-row roller. to accomplish with the roller is several things. We want to make a nice smooth top when we get ready to transplant melons and sweet potatoes. We also want to press down and kind of seal that insecticide in the root. And it will also seal in some moisture, although we're not ready to plant just yet. But that's kind of the objective of doing that, instead of running like a do-all or something. Makes it nice and pretty on this sandy ground here. Just to kind of recap also from this morning, you know, those fungicides put a layer of protection over the foliage and the fruit. And the disease, you know, is going to attack pretty much one or the other or both. And you have to keep doing it because, you know, the plants are continuing to grow and put on new foliage. So if you spray this week, come back next week, you know, you'll have a lot of new foliage that has never had anything on it. And recap also, I have more trouble on disease with the melons on plastic because they're earlier and it's more wetter. We have more rain than the later crops like we're going to put in this field here. I don't have as much trouble with disease there, and that's a lot of the reason why. So I guess we're going to wrap it up here. I'm going to finish this. It'll be 6 o'clock maybe before I get done. Started at 4:45 this morning when I got to the shop, so it's been a long day. If y'all have not subscribed to us, I would appreciate it if you do that. My goal is to try to do 2 videos a week. I'm going to try my best for that, although I can't promise. So I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Thanks for subscribing if you already have. Thanks for watching. And until then, we will see y'all next time.